Hello you guys, it's Lily. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome to my channel. So today I am super excited. I've been waiting to film this video for a while. I don't know why, but I'm really excited to talk about what I'm talking about today, which, if you couldn't tell from the title, is why I am choosing to do a home birth and how I am preparing for it. If you've watched my channel for a while, you may know that I've been planning on doing a home birth before even getting pregnant. I've mentioned in some videos previously that I really have longed to do a natural birth for a really long time. And so that all really started when I was really young, honestly, because I grew up without really fear of birth because my mom always talked very highly of birth. My grandma talked very highly of birth. And so there was never this scariness with birth when it was talked about to me. My mom had 3 kids and she had all 3 of her kids naturally. I am the middle child, and my birth story is that she actually went to a doctor an hour away. And so they had to get a hotel and everything when going into labor. And so I was born 2 weeks early. My mom was having contractions throughout the day, but since it was her second child, she wasn't too concerned about it. And they had Frisch's big boy. They went to the hotel and were watching a movie, and her water broke on the hotel bed. And literally the hospital's I think 2 or 3 minutes away from the hotel, and she literally was pushing me out in the hospital parking lot. Had to have someone get a wheelchair so she didn't have me in the parking lot. And by the time she got into the hospital, got checked in and got in a room, I was born in 20 minutes maybe. So that is how I was born. Growing up hearing that, it always made me not really fearful of birth. There's so many horror stories about birth, and if you are around a lot of people who have had really traumatic births and talk really poorly about birth, it can be something very scary. I feel like there's power in the way that we talk about birth and the way that birth is displayed to people, especially children and teenagers and stuff like that, because Hollywood and all the movie industry has done a very good job at making birth look terrifying and scary, and even just the world in general, especially the United States, making birth a medical emergency rather than something that's normal and just a part of life. So anyway, with that being said, I always knew, even as a teenager and stuff like that, that I probably wanted to go down the natural birth route, just with my mom's experience. And then also my grandma had 2 kids and she had great births, natural births. And then before that, my great grandma had natural births. And then yeah, I wanted to start with that. And so kind of stepping into how I really decided that I wanted to do a home birth, or plan to do a home birth. After getting married, I mentioned probably to my husband before we got married that I probably wanted to do a natural birth, but we didn't really talk much about it because I wasn't pregnant, wasn't planning on getting pregnant for a while. Then I started diving into the holistic world and the natural world, crunchy, community. I had started following some birth Instagram accounts. I don't even know when, but just here and there would follow some accounts that I saw. And a lot of the natural holistic birth accounts are very for natural birth and home births and stuff like that. So even just through following a lot of holistic accounts and natural accounts, I kind of got into that world, because before deciding to do a home birth, I was just thinking I was going to do a hospital birth but go naturally. And so I think that's a lot of what women go into. My mom did have natural births, but she had them at the hospital. So I don't know anyone actually that has had a home birth personally. That's a whole another world, I feel like. And so when kind of getting acquainted with it and seeing other people have home births and stuff like that, it kind of made me think, okay, maybe I could do this. Well, then diving more into like the whole holistic living and getting, you know, a couple years into marriage and then getting more serious about talking about, you know, wanting to get pregnant, I really wanted to research a lot more about birth. I've always loved researching birth. I've always loved learning about birth. I've watched so many birth videos on YouTube. I can't even count how many. I started watching those in like high school. I just have always loved birth. So keep that in mind. Yeah, I started just really wanting to learn more about birth in general, not just home birth. Through the accounts that I was following on Instagram, like they were saying so many things about the birth industry in like hospital settings and stuff like that. And just really, I guess, bringing to light how birth is treated in like hospitals and stuff like that. So I decided to read and dive into learning a lot about just birth in general. And I also really wanted to take the approach of learning about birth through God's eyes and in God's way, because I think that is something that, you know, not a lot of people talk about, is how spiritual birth is and how beautiful it is and how God created it. And so I was led to different books, different resources that really correlated birth with God. And so I really wanted to like dive into that as well. In 2023, I decided to read a book a month, which I explained in how I prepared for pregnancy. I'll link that video, but so I decided I wanted to read a bunch of books to educate myself, because social media is a great educational tool, but it's not like, you always hear like, don't believe everything you hear on social media. So I wanted to learn for myself. And also I wanted to mention the accounts that I followed on social media, because if you guys are interested, you can like go follow those. So I follow a lot of accounts. I'll name them real quick and then I'll leave them down below. But like the biggest one that I started following at first was Built to Birth and Pain-Free Birth. So those ones are like very popular. And then I started following Pain-Free Childbirth, Supernatural Childbirth Mamas, Serenity Life Doula, Mama Natural, Chanel Hogue, which used to be a working mama, but she changed her name, and then Christian Hypnobirthing. So those are a lot of the accounts that I follow about birth. Then I decided I wanted to read a book a month, and not every book I read was about birth, but most of them were. And so let me go into my list of books that I read. And as I said, I really wanted to dive into like the spiritual aspect of birth as well, like what God says about birth, rather than just like the medical side as well. So I first read Expectant, which was a great book. It is actually about pregnancy, but this book is a Christian book. It's beautiful. It really, like, honestly, I should read it before he's born, but maybe I'll get to it, maybe I won't. That one's really good. It shares birth stories and then just how to prepare spiritually for a child, basically, while you're obviously expecting. February was It Starts with the Egg, so that's not a spiritual book, but it really is a lot of research on just how like a baby is formed and developed. And also it's a very like holistic book about how, like, if you're struggling with infertility or PCOS or endometriosis or anything like that, this book really helps like identify what those things are, how they are caused, and how to prevent them or how to treat them naturally and stuff like that. That was a really informative book before like even trying to get pregnant. We weren't experiencing any infertility or anything like that, but it's a very eye-opening book just to get knowledge about that. March was Childbirth Without Fear, really good book. April was also Childbirth Without Fear. This was all in 2023. May, pain-free childbirth. June, brain health, which is the same author as It Starts with the Egg. So that's kind of like how the baby's brain develops in the womb and stuff like that. Another kind of like informative book. Redeeming Childbirth was August, which was my like favorite book. I actually was starting to read that again a couple months ago, but fell off the wagon there. It's been really hard for me to like sit down and read a book recently, but that one was my favorite one. It really ties into the spiritual aspect of birth with also like the physical aspect of birth. And then The Womanly Art of Breastfeeding, which breastfeeding is a whole nother thing. And then I read Pushed, which is not a Christian book, but it explains like the medical side, the medical industry of birth and how they've medicalized birth, I guess, especially in the United States. And yeah, so those are the books that I read. There's a lot more books out there that I had on my list that I just didn't get a chance to read, but they all kind of say the same thing. Once you really start to get knowledgeable about birth and learn a lot about birth, it's all kind of like repeating itself pretty much. But I really love like the Christian birth books. Once I was like starting to feel really like good about birth, like understanding a lot of what birth is and the process of birth, like the actual physical side of birth, like the stages of birth, all that kind of stuff, like really getting knowledgeable about that. And then also correlating like the spiritual aspect of birth, I really got into listening to podcasts about like birth stories. And honestly, that has been the thing that has blessed me the most with preparing for birth. So the Lord kind of led me to podcasts about like testimonies of births, because as I said before, I used to watch birth stories all the time on like YouTube, and I love listening to just birth stories in general. And I was like, there's gotta be like a podcast out there that is people talking about positive birth stories, because I love listening to them. So last fall, so like a year ago, I had to drive every single weekend back and forth from where we used to live to where we live now, because we moved states. And so I had to drive back and forth every weekend. I had a lot of time to listen to podcasts. So I literally just typed supernatural birth. Yeah, that's just what I typed in Spotify, was supernatural childbirth. And it came up with this podcast called Supernatural Childbirth Mamas. And it's a smaller, like not super popular podcast, but it's gotten bigger, and it is all Christian birth stories. And they started producing them, I'm not really sure, like around 2020. I literally went through all the episodes, listened to all of them, and just filling my mind with these positive birth stories that were centered around God was amazing. And honestly now, like, I do have to use discernment when listening, because I don't 100% agree with their theology, because a lot of them expect pain-free births, which at first I believed, but after kind of praying and like asking the Lord what he feels about this, I just really didn't feel personally that that was correct. And so just whenever you're reading anything, doesn't have to be about birth, you know, if it's about God but it's not from the Word of God, use discernment, because as I said, at first I really believed it, and then when I was listening to it throughout the months, I was really starting to feel that it was not correct. But nonetheless, it has been such an amazing resource to use to just fill my mind and my spirit with just positive, affirming birth stories. That has been such a great podcast that I've been listening to for a year now. Once I finished all those episodes, I listened to the Built to Birth podcast, which Bridget Taylor is the one who is in charge, who runs Built to Birth. And I love her content. She's not like outwardly a Christian, so she doesn't really like talk about God and birth, but she has her podcast that is a bunch of positive birth stories as well. So I really like that podcast. Listen to some of those. She doesn't make those anymore, those podcasts anymore, but recently, since being pregnant, through Supernatural Childbirth Mama's podcast, I found this other podcast, which is called A Heavenly Welcome. And so it's, for some reason, I can't find it on any other platform except on the website. The girl who is in charge of A Heavenly Welcome, her name is Kiara Blazer, and she does not make the podcasts anymore, or the episodes anymore. I think the last one was in like 2019, so it's been a while, but she has a lot of them, so I've been listening to those a lot as well, and I actually really like those podcasts as well, because in those ones there's a lot more stories, there's a lot more different stories. I feel like in the Supernatural Childbirth podcast there's a lot of the same, like, oh, it's all like home births pretty much, or birth center births, but this A Heavenly Welcome has like births in the hospital, home births, births with an epidural, C-section births, all that kind of stuff. So you get a very wide variety of births in that podcast, and I really have enjoyed listening to that podcast as well. And it's a Christian podcast, so all of the women, you know, give God the glory and speak on how the Lord was with them through their birth and stuff like that. And I feel like most of them are more spiritually sound in their birth thinking. So books, podcasts, and then basically once I got pregnant, I knew for sure that I wanted to go down the midwifery route. I did not want to do a hospital birth at all, especially with all the research that I have found, all the things that I've read. Like, I was not going to do a conventional hospital birth. So when we moved to Michigan, we wanted to get pregnant pretty quick after moving. So I started researching midwives around this area. I had a not consultation, but like a meeting with a midwife last October, so a year ago. I did not end up going with her, but then when I got pregnant in April, I thought I was gonna go with her, but I just did not have the best feeling about her, so I decided to continue searching. And then the Lord led me to the midwife that I have now, who I absolutely love. She is literally a gift from God. She has made my pregnancy experience so amazing. I'm just so grateful for just the experience that I've had. I think having a care provider that you really trust and that is going to give you a great experience is honestly what makes pregnancy or breaks pregnancy. I have had countless friends and heard countless stories of people just having horrible experiences because of simply their care provider, and my care provider has been on my side the whole time. We've always seen eye to eye on pretty much everything, and she does home births, so like strictly home births basically, so it's just been such an amazing experience. I've really connected with her. Every time I go there, it just is so comforting and calm and just such a great atmosphere, and I love it so much. Then basically once I got pregnant, once I chose my midwife and the route that I was going, now I am 29 weeks pregnant. Well, when you see this, I'll be 30 weeks pregnant, and I guess like how I'm continuing to prepare is just pretty much doing the same things. I continue to listen to those podcasts, keep filling my mind with just positive birth stories. That is like, honestly, if you're going with a care provider in like a hospital setting or anything like that, but you want to do natural birth, like I would say the biggest thing that has helped me is just filling my mind, filling my like spirit with positive birth stories, because the more you listen, the more you realize how many women have done it. It makes it so much less scary, and I have no fear at all going into birth. Like, I'm excited. The only thing I'm like still a little nervous about is just my energy. I'm nervous that I'm not gonna have enough energy depending on how long it is or whatever, but I'm not nervous about the contractions. I'm not nervous about pushing. Even like a year ago, I felt like I was nervous about pushing. Like, that's like always the most nerve-wracking part, but listening to so many birth stories, women say that that's the best part, is pushing, and that's like the most exciting part. Not nervous about the things that people tell you, oh, what if you have an emergency? What if this or that or the other? Like, I'm not nervous about that because I trust my midwife, and also being knowledgeable about most of the times when there's emergencies, they're not really emergencies. They were just emergencies that were caused by exterior things. And knowing that as long as my levels are good, as long as the baby is like healthy and is good throughout the whole labor and delivery, like there's nothing to be scared about. Again, being educated and knowing what to look for is so crucial. It makes you feel empowered. And so I have been spiritually preparing. I've been praying all throughout my birth, or all throughout my pregnancy. And a lot of these birth stories, women encourage other women to have scriptures posted on the wall or put them in a notebook and have people just read scripture over you. And so I'm really going to be leaning into the Lord. My theme for my birth is just surrender, which I feel like is my theme for my life, but just surrendering the process to Him and just truly focusing on the Lord in my birth. So I've been creating this note in my notes app of just scriptures throughout my pregnancy that I'm going to write down and post on my walls, have my husband read them off to me, just filling my mind with the word, knowing that birth is a natural thing that the Lord has created for my body to do and that I can do it. Also making a birth plan. Now my birth plan, I say that very loosely because it's not a plan. It's more just a step-by-step of what birth should look like and what to expect in like labor, I guess. So just the stages of labor. It's really mostly for me and for Jack when I'm in it, to know what to expect. So it's not like at this time I want to do this and at this time I want to do this. It's more so reminding myself, okay, this is normal. Okay, like this is the next stage, blah, 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 blah. And then also like, okay, in this stage, like I want Jack to help me breathe. At this stage, you know, I'm gonna be pretty tired, so be drinking a lot of water, having a little snack, trying to rest, go on walks, all that kind of stuff. It's more that. So I guess it is a birth plan, but it's loose because I want the Lord to do what He's gonna do. So recently, literally within the last couple, oh my gosh, sorry. Whew. Within the last couple of weeks, as I said, I have not been able to read a lot of books, which I really wanted to read a couple more books before giving birth, but I just cannot sit down and read a book right now. And so I actually went on Audible, and there's a lot of books that I've been wanting to read that are free on Audible. Obviously, you have to have an Amazon Prime account, but Ina May Jenkins, she's a legend in the birth world, and so many people like rave about her books, and those are the books that I have not read yet. They're not Christian books, which is why I didn't want to read them until like now. She has a breastfeeding book and a childbirth book, and they're both free on Audible. And so I listened to the breastfeeding one. That one was amazing. It was great. They're very long. Each one I think is like 13 hours long of listening, but I went on a road trip, so got to listen to that. And then we're going on our baby moon, literally the day I'm filming this. So I've been listening to that this week, and we'll continue to listen to that this week. So those are free. There's some other ones that I wanted to listen to, like sleep coaching or whatever. I don't know how I feel about it yet, but I listened to some of those. But yeah, breastfeeding, childbirth, like go on Audible and see if you can find free books. I prefer listening rather than reading, as you can tell, because I like podcasts and I like Audible books. Other than that, talking with friends, the more I've been vocal and open about sharing that I want to do a natural birth and a home birth and stuff like that, and if you go on my Instagram or you go on my YouTube channel, like you watch one video and you probably can tell, like I am holistic, I like the natural living, all that kind of stuff. So a lot of people have reached out to me and shared their birth stories and encouraged me. I've become close friends with some people who have had really positive birth stories and stuff like that. So just talking with people like that and just continuing to fill my mind with just positive stories and positive encouragement. A big, huge thing that I will say that has been such a blessing in us deciding to do a home birth is the support of our family. We have not had anyone really talk us down from doing a home birth. Our immediate families have been really, really supportive of it. Maybe they might have their own thoughts, but my mom and my dad have been very supportive of it. They've met my midwife and they really love her. And because my mom had a natural birth, she's never been against doing a home birth. And so she's been very, very supportive of it. And my mother-in-law, she had very traumatic births, but throughout me explaining birth and explaining what I've learned about birth and all my research and stuff like that, she feels comfortable with it and is very like encouraging about it. It's just a different way of doing it, you know? It's not the normal, it's not the conventional, but once you really get educated and teach others about it, it's not scary at all. As I said, I'm not scared at all. I'm very excited and very just eager for it to happen. So that is everything. Yeah, let me know, anyone who's watching, if you've had a home birth or if you are pregnant and thinking about doing a home birth. I would love to chat with you and just give you some encouragement. Yeah, I know a lot of you have said that you found out you're pregnant like through the video that I posted and finding out that I'm pregnant. So I know a lot of you are pregnant with me, which is so fun and so cool. So definitely let me know what you're thinking, or if this video even made you start thinking that you might do things differently. So yeah, but I love you guys and thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys!